Good evening, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. Tonight we have a special team that never been covered for more than a year since this program has been on. I'm going to be talking about Cambodia and cultural heritage. Cultural heritage because we have the great wonder of the world, which is Angkor Wat. We see Angkor Wat as a tourist destination. Many Cambodians go and just watch, look at the temple a bit, but they don't understand what's behind, except that it's Cambodian temple. Tourists come, they appreciate the carving and everything. But I think it's more than just the temple. Here we have the pleasure to have today with us Dr. Damian even from the University of Sydney, who's based in, now they have a project in Angkor. And I like to have a nice discussion on what does it mean cultural heritage in the context of Cambodia, in the context of Cambodia in the region, in the context of Cambodia in the world, and perhaps we could understand better the power of cultural heritage. So, Damian, can I call you Damian?
Yes, of
Damian,
course.
welcome.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
Yes. Before we start, I'll give you a few minutes to just give a bit of background, your professional background a bit about the project you're on now, you know, so that the audience appreciate what we're going to be talking about.
Sure. Well, I'm an archaeologist by training. I got my PhD from the University of Sydney. I've spent my whole career at Sydney, and I'm still on staff there. But also for my whole career, I've been working in Cambodia on archaeological projects here, mostly in the Angkor area. So the Australian project has for the Australian team has for 12 or 13 years now cooperated with the Apsara National Authority and the French team on a project called the Greater Angkor Project.
Yes.
And this is kind of a unique project in some respects because unlike most of the other teams who are involved in rebuilding temples and this kind of thing, we're much more interested in the context of the temples.
Okay. What do you mean by the context of the temple?
We're interested in questions about who were the people who built these temples? How did they live? Where did they live? How did they feed themselves? What was their economy
So it's more
like?
from the anthropology side,
Right. So instead of looking at the temples as kind of these isolated grey stone objects, we tend to look at the full picture of everyday life around the temples, and we try and ask particular questions of this archaeological record about what happened to the Khmer Empire, what happened to this great city at particular points in time. Why was it so successful? Why did it stop becoming so successful at a certain point? And so these are the kinds of issues that that we're interested in.
And you find some answer, I hope?
Well, yes. I mean, you would hope so, really, after 13 years. Yes, I mean, in fact, we never really expected to find quite such an amazing set of results. When I first started work here, the count of temples in the Angkor area was something like 350, 400 temples in the Angkor area. And I think there was around about 1,500 temples that were known all across Cambodia. Now we know of well over 1,000 temples in the Angkor area.
So you discover about a good 700 to 800 more.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's the level of increase. And Cambodia-wide, the Ministry of Culture now has an inventory which shows more than 5,000 temple sites around Cambodia. So
predating to what period?
From all kinds of periods. Some of the earliest information that we have goes back about 4,000 or 5,000 years.
Wow.
From the present day right up until the present, and so we look into and document all of those sites and all of those places. So, for example, one of the really interesting outcomes at Angkor is that people just often assume that Angkor sprang up out of nowhere in the 7th or 8th centuries, but in fact what we now know after research in the last 10 years is that there's an almost continuous history of around about 4,000 years just in the Angkor area alone. So quite amazing increase in our level of knowledge, which we didn't really expect when we started work here.
And in the context of all this finding, how does international cooperation, find its way? My understanding is that Angkor is been listed as part of World Heritage. How does it work with the Apsara National Authority?
Right. Well,
institution-wise, right?
Institutionally, it's obviously the Apsara National Authority, which has jurisdiction over Angkor. They decide who gets to work there and what goes on there.
Yeah.
But Cambodia is in a kind of a unique situation in many ways, because around about 20 years ago, the Cambodian authorities basically threw open the doors and said, look, this is an enormous challenge, this huge archaeological site, and they invited in and encouraged as much international cooperation as possible. Which is not the case in other countries.
Is that right? One would think that the country should be welcoming such an international cooperation expertise, right?
It's quite often not the case, actually. For instance,
why?
Well, often for reasons of nationalism.
Okay.
People are very much afraid of, in some countries, of foreigners coming in and kind of dominating or appropriating their cultural heritage. Perhaps they have a very negative history of colonial domination of cultural heritage and so on. The situation in Cambodia is a little bit different, I think, because the challenges of this, not only managing the world's largest religious monument, but this huge area of hundreds and hundreds of monuments, was a challenge that would be extremely difficult even for the wealthiest of countries. And so Cambodia, I think the authorities here 20 years ago were in a situation where they were smart enough to realize that it just doesn't make sense to go it alone.
Yes. From the prospect of, of course, you're looking more from the archaeological side, the finding, the historical, the understanding of our culture and everything. How do you link with the current reality of a country like Cambodia, who have just gone through, in recent history, the genocide area is in the historical context is very recent. It's not even history yet.
Right.
We're not even history yet. But how do you reconcile it with nation building, for example? Does it help, the Cambodian as a people, as a culture, as a country who's emerging from years of difficulty, in terms of nation building? How any effect on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the great privileges, I think, for me being a foreigner and having the ability to work here in Cambodia. I mean, it's a tremendous honor from the point of view of the international teams working here to be able to participate in work on something that's so central to Cambodian national pride, national unity, the identity of Khmer people.
Yes.
I think Angkor is as strong and as central and as powerful in terms of Khmer identity as it ever has been.
Yes.
And in that respect, these kind of amazing discoveries and quite spectacular results that we're finding about the history of Angkor really contribute, I think, to a sense of pride and an encouragement of this Khmer identity. And it's a great honor to be a part of that, and also to be able to work with Cambodian archaeologists.
Yes.
When I started work here many years ago, the Apsara National Authority was a very small organization, just a few dozen people, most of whom had been educated overseas and had returned. And it's transformed over the last 10 years or so into a huge, very professional organization, staffed with many hundreds of people, most of whom were born, raised, and educated here in Cambodia. And so it's been quite an amazing transformation.
So it's a big transformation in terms of transfer of know-how, of knowledge on way to do things, and appreciating this latest technology. I mean, speaking of technology, I mean, I heard that there are a lot of aerial surveys, satellite. You do use a lot of this thing to uncover many of these unknown temple, no?
Right. I mean, that's my specialty. My technical specialty as an archaeologist is using satellite imagery and particular types of sensors that we fly over the temples on helicopters or airplanes. Some of these sensors are quite amazing. They can actually see through the trees, for example, and map what lies on the forest floor beneath the trees. So things that you can't see with the naked eye. So we use all of these kinds of technologies in an effort to try and understand what's going on. Always, not just using technologies just for the sake of having something fancy and and so on, but always with these questions in mind about what happened here, who were these people, and what did they do, why were they successful. So always with a view to answering these historical questions.
So with the sort of satellite mapping, you're able to discern the different period, right, of history, and probably make the linkage as to the evolution of the civilization in Cambodia. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, my particular interest is using this satellite imagery to look at the way that cities grew in Cambodia.
Explain me a bit.
Well, so we can see, for example, the mounds and the temple sites, and we once we visit those temple sites on the ground, we see evidence of what period they're from: pre-Angkor period, the Angkor period, and so on.
Is it quite distinctive, each period?
Reasonably, yes. In the prehistoric period, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, Khmer people lived in very round, circular settlement sites, which you see all around the country. There are hundreds of these sites. Then during the pre-Angkor period, they started to move into basically square cities, so square enclosures, which you go into the Angkor period. These square enclosures become huge, and they have these very elaborate water management systems surrounding them as well, the barais, the canals, and so on. And so you can really see the evolution in the cities over time. And you get an idea that the management of water was one of the key reasons for why these very simple kind of tribal Iron Age people all of a sudden developed into this amazing civilization of Angkor. Really, it was their incredible mastery of water and their engineering abilities, which I think were responsible for that success.
Wow. So what is your current challenge now?
Well, at the moment, the last few years, the big question for me has been, okay, we found this huge water management system at Angkor. We know that at Angkor it was partly responsible for the success of the civilization there, and we know it was also caused them problems as well, which maybe contributed to the ultimate abandonment of Angkor as the capital. So now I'm curious to look at other cities in Cambodia where people understand them as temple sites, places like Bantich Ma, places like Kokher, and try and find out, okay, are these the center of large cities as well? Did they have huge water management systems which played a role in their success? So looking at, basically asking the question, was Angkor unique, or was it part of a much broader phenomenon that existed across Khmer culture? And also to compare Khmer history to different cultures in different parts of the world.
Like,
for instance, Sri Lanka, for instance, the Maya civilization in Central America. Some very similar themes going on there to what was happening in the Angkor period here in Cambodia.
Are there, from this thing, are there lessons learned for the current, like we live in an era of climate change, we live in an era of, where people throughout the world start to pay attention to nature, to environment, to, things that we for the last so many years take for granted, and I'm pretty sure that during the Angkor era, when you mentioned about this whole water management, is all about environment. It's all about water sustain life, and life grow out of that. We're back to that same, dilemma now. Any lesson learned?
Sure. I mean, the situation is not unique to Cambodia either. I mean, these are the lessons that we learn when we compare what happened at Angkor to different civilizations, is that there's a very common theme across these civilizations in different areas. to do with the sustainability of their water management systems, changes in climate, both short term and long term, and really the role that the ability to control water played in both the rise and also the fall of these civilizations. And it's not so much a case of history repeating, of course, because obviously in the modern world we have different engineering solutions, and the Apsara Authority implements those solutions very effectively.
Using technology.
Using modern technology, and modern engineering know-how and so on. But nonetheless, it turns out, particularly from all of the flooding which we've had in the last 3 years, that water once again is becoming one of the main challenges to the management of the Angkor complex.
Right? Is that right? Were there excessive flooding in the Siem Reap area?
There was terrible flooding in 2 of the last 3 years. It's been really, really bad. Mostly because of natural factors, the unpredictable natural factors, essentially. And so the Apsara National Authority has been doing a tremendous job, sometimes 24 hours a day out there in the middle of the night, digging emergency canals. And,
is that right?
And by and large, to get the water out of there.
Yes.
Right. And so far they've done a terrific job of preventing damage to the temples, but it seems like this flooding phenomenon is going to become the new normal in many ways. And so for that reason, Excellency Sokhan, the chairman of the Apsara Authority, decided to create an emergency prevention and response unit specifically to do with this water problem. So yes, I mean, once again, water becoming a very serious challenge, even as it used to be 1,000 years ago.
Wow. Looking from the international perspective as a World Heritage, where do you situate Cambodia, Angkor, versus other World Heritage site in terms the grandeur of the size? Where does Cambodia rank in terms of the magnitude of the sort of estate?
Well, one of the things that our research has revealed, this joint Cambodian-Australian project over the last few years, is that in fact Angkor was the very largest settlement complex in the entire human history before the Industrial Revolution. Not so much in population, but certainly in terms of its size and how big it is on the landscape. And so, I mean, that's a tremendous challenge, of course, by any measure in terms of management and so on. So the scale of things that happened at Angkor in terms of the engineering are basically unparalleled anywhere else in the world, in my opinion. Perhaps I'm biased as as an archaeologist working here, but from my point of view, and I think even archaeologists overseas would start to agree that the feats of engineering and the achievements of the Khmer during the Angkor period were perhaps unmatched anywhere else in the world. Which wasn't really realized, I think, 20 or 30 years ago.
Is that right?
And now that we've begun to uncover this huge mass of information and begun to understand the scale of what was achieved here, it's become clear.
You mentioned about this in engineering ingenuity. I could never understand how this from somebody who have no knowledge of architecture or engineering background, right? How you can put all this big stone together and it stick together, now there are probably some 3D modeling software that probably could explain or something, I mean, so in all your research, you do a lot of this 3D modeling, that sort of thing?
We do. One of the interesting things about modern archaeological projects is that they involve dozens of specialists from different fields, and one of the specialists that we have on our project is a 3D modeling specialist. And so he not only does reconstructions of temples, not how they look now, but how they would have looked when they originally built, but also puts people into that picture as well. So too often, we just see pictures of temples not populated with any people, nothing going on, and these kind of cold grey buildings.
Awesome.
But what we have now is reconstructions of how the temples would have looked or may have looked when they were built.
How it would live. How would people live in there?
With people using them, walking through them, doing the things that perhaps they would have used the temples for 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
And so, which is an amazing thing, not only from a research point of view, because you get to test different ideas and see if it looks stupid when you or if it looks plausible, like this may have happened. But also for showing these things to the general public and also educating them about the kinds of things that happened in everyday life in the Angkor period.
Yeah, I'm thinking when we go to the Angkor Wat, right? You go, you climb the step, and then you see area where I was told it's supposed to be water inside the temple. Be interesting to reimagine in this modeling how people come to this water pond there, and what's the purpose of them using is in terms of serving the king, that sort of thing. Amazing.
Yes, I mean, and all of these things can be done. I mean, people often don't realize that these were very much living monuments, full of people, full of life, full of activity, and color and sound and music. And yes, with this technology now, we can recreate this these kinds of scenes.
Damian, I don't know whether you know or not, but I heard that a film is being made called the Khmer Empire starred by Angelina Jolie and Jet Li. I hope they work with you guys.
I saw this in the news, but I'm not sure.
Wow, I mean, I think they have to have something to do. They have to reflect the Khmer Empire in its. But Angelina Jolie, she knows, she adopted Cambodian kids, so she knows our culture. I hope it reflects the true grandeur of our civilization.
Yeah.
And having Jet Li on that.
It's very difficult. The problem with these kinds of movies is recreating or depicting the Angkor period or past periods with some kind of sensitivity, without doing over the top Hollywood kinds of things and taking artistic liberties with what's going on. So yes, if they do it,
they Transformer 3, they have where all these aliens shoot their space somewhere from Angkor Wat. You see that piece,
Yes,
but it's interesting. No, I mean, I think we're coming to the end of our show, but all I want to say is that from our short little discussion, it shows how complex the issue of culture, heritage is, about the difficulty of mobilizing resource, mobilizing expertise, try to set the context, for a nation to rediscover. You see, Cambodia, unlike other countries who have not gone through a massive historical distortion caused by the civil war, caused by the genocide, we sort of lost a generation. We sort of lost a trend of history in there. I think Egypt, on the contrary, have maintained that continuity, right?
Right.
So that's probably less dramatic. But in our case, it's very dramatic, that the sense of rediscovery. And I think what you're doing with the team of international experts, archaeologists, 3D modeling, the sort of thing, is going to do a lot of help in terms of reviving, this notion of Cambodia as a nation, as a culture.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's very exciting, and I feel very privileged to be a part of it. If we can kind of turn around that idea of the tragedy of recent Cambodian history, I mean, we can look at it from another perspective as well.
Yes.
In that it has provided Cambodia with the chance to learn from the mistakes that happened elsewhere in the world, to start with a blank slate, and in a sense to do things right. And in a sense, this model of cooperation, of international cooperation, that's been adopted within the framework of managing Angkor and doing research on Angkor, has, in a sense, become an idea of world's best practice.
I see.
And a model for other countries that are now looking to emulate this kind of experience in Cambodia, because it provides a framework whereby these incredibly complex, incredibly expensive modern archaeological scientific projects can be negotiated and can be implemented, as we've seen very successfully at Angkor, perhaps less so in other places.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I'm personally very optimistic about the future of things, not only in terms of Angkor, but in terms of cultural heritage more broadly in Cambodia. I think the institutions are strong, and it's a very positive thing.
Good. Well, Damian, thank you so much for coming to the show for such a, short notice, and try to share with us a glimpse on the enormous amount of work that's taking place. So I want to say thank you, and I hope, when you have time, when you're in town, I could invite you. Maybe we can cover on something much more specific.
Sure.
On more scientific base on this modeling would be great, right? Don't forget to send some pictures.
Okay, I will. I will.
All right.
I'll send you some pictures and some videos as well. Some nice reconstructions.
That's very good.
Amazing stuff.
Good. Well, anyway, thank you so much. So, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, what you heard in the last 30 minutes or so of this dialogue you can have a glimpse a bit that this cultural heritage is not so much understood by most of us. Even me, as an avid reader, I follow news and everything. It's only so much I know, because it's a field of expertise in itself. If you're not in the industry, if you're not in the business, you would not know. And we heard about Apsara, we know they're doing a good job, but we don't know what job they're doing. And from my discussion just now, and with Damian off the show, I mean, it's a lot of work is done. But one thing I can draw in terms of conclusion is that Cambodia have made a dramatic overture in the early 90s, when the country is opened up after the Paris Peace Accord. We made a dramatic gesture to the rest of the world to say, look, we have one of the great wonders in the world. We have suffered. We don't have resource. We could have been nationalistic in terms of keeping everything to ourselves, but no, we thought that this should belong to the world heritage. But it requires maintenance, it requires support, it requires research, and in that process, we open up. We welcome international expertise, international cooperation, and I'm glad to hear that Damian was mentioning that this has turned out to be one of the best practice, in terms of international cooperation, unlike other countries who have chosen the path of remaining close for their own national reason, which we don't know. But at the end of the day, it's good that we make this gesture. And if I can just put this cultural heritage part of the larger macroeconomy development of this country, this is not uncommon, because the policy of the royal government, let's face it, since in the early days, has always been about overture, opening the country to the international. And this is a good example that another area of success that Cambodia can claim, that by opening up, we have built our credibility, we have built our knowledge base, we have trained our local people to do the work that we would not have been able to do had we not been exposed to all this expertise, right? So another point that we can score in favor of our country. So on that note, I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next week. Good night.